Reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary of Magdala. Seeing his mother and the disciple he loved standing near her, Jesus said to his mother, "Woman, this is your son." Then to the disciple he said, "This is your mother." And from that moment, the disciple made a place for her in his home.
So I'd just like to thank you, to thank God and to thank Our Lady for each one of you here again today. I can't tell you how much it means to me, it means to our community here, to welcome you here today amongst us. I'd like to thank you for your presence, and most of all, I'd like to thank you for your prayers. This house of God will be filled with your prayers today. There are many, many wonderful blessings about being a priest. I'm, as well as the parish priest here at Our Lady of Fatima, I'm also the vocations director for Westminster Diocese, and so I have that privilege of accompanying men of different ages on that road of discerning if this is indeed God's will for them to become priests. And I always say to them that one of the most precious moments for me in the daily life of being a priest is the end of the day, particularly the end of a Sunday, a wonderful day full of prayer and praise, community. At the end of it all, the parish priest locks the doors at the back, the last person has left, and then you are left alone with the Lord in this house of God, this house of prayer. And just the candles flickering still in front of the statues, reminding us of the prayers that have been offered to God in this building on that day. And I just love, it's one of my favourite moments of the whole week, is just to sit in the stillness, the quietness, the peace of the church, and just to be filled with that prayer, that presence of prayer, all of the petitions, the joys, the sorrows that people have brought to God during the day. It's just a most wonderful moment in time. And this evening, I tell you, I'm going to enjoy it this evening. I'm going to enjoy today when everyone has gone home and hopefully all has gone well. So far, so good. The alarm hasn't gone off yet. I'm going to enjoy this evening just sitting here in the church and just feeling the power, the presence of your prayers here today. And you've come, as I said at the beginning of our time together today, you've come to join our community at a moment of particular significance and grace. If you look on the plaque at the back of the sanctuary, you'll see that our church building was dedicated, consecrated 50 years ago, completed. And this year, 2015, we are giving thanks to God for all of the graces, all of the gifts that God has given to our community here of Our Lady of Fatima over these last 50 years. And in fact, the parish itself is now 60 years old this year. Afterwards, you're going to go through to our school hall. And that school hall was actually our church for the first 10 years of the parish's history. This is a wonderful community, a very diverse community, people from all over the world. We may not be the wealthiest of people with what we have in our pockets, but what we have in our hearts is just such a blessing to be a part of this community. It's a community that comes here day after day to give thanks to the Lord, praise the Lord for the gift of faith. And I've been honoured to be here as parish priest now, coming up to the end of my second year. And your presence here at the beginning of our Jubilee year is a particular gift for us, to fill this church with its love for Our Lady of Fatima. It's a journey, this Jubilee year, which I hope will be a journey of renewal, of rediscovery for us as a parish community, of the message of Our Lady of Fatima. I think it's a sadness that often you can be in a parish community or a school, a Catholic school, and often we don't know enough. We don't know our patrons very well at all. Yes, we see their statue. Yes, we pray their name, but often we don't really know the message, the mission, the gift that our patron, our parish patron or our school patron is to us. This year we have begun the first Saturday devotions, which Our Lady asked of Sister Lucia. In May, the group of the parishioners, we are blessed to be going to Fatima itself for the actual feast day of Our Lady of Fatima. And that will be a blessing which we will bring back to the parish. And during that pilgrimage, we are going to reconsecrate our parish community to Our Lady of Fatima, as we will be consecrating our parish to her today as well. So it's a chance for us to really rediscover the message of Fatima and to really take that mission which Our Lady gave to the three shepherd children, to really take that to our hearts as our mission. If Our Lady of Fatima is our patron, then that means that her mission is our mission. And it's a mission which I know is so central to the ministry of A Day with Mary. I know that many of you give your lives so generously, often week after week, touring the different parishes near and far, again taking to your hearts the message of Our Lady of Fatima, the power of prayer, the power of penance, the power of reparation. This is a great work that you do. It's a hidden ministry, but it's a ministry which brings such fruit and such blessings to others. So I'd like to thank each one of you who give yourself in this particular way. Of course, in a couple of years' time, we will be celebrating the centenary of the apparitions at Fatima. And it will be a particular time to look back, to see the journey travelled over these 100 years. This year, last year, 2014, we've been remembering those times in which Our Lady appeared at Fatima. Those times of a world war which brought human conflict to new depths of brutality. I've been thinking about that as a society. Many of you may have been to the Tower of London last year with that extraordinary sight of all of the red poppies, that river of blood, showing us in such a dramatic way the reality of war, the terrible waste of war. And that world war brought a waste that the world had never seen before. And Our Lady's message to the shepherd children, to us, is that war is a consequence of sin. And it's only through healing the sin of the world, reparation, it's only through that complete conversion of the human heart that war, conflict, and violence will be brought to an end. And we see in our daily news, day after day, the reality of that violence, that depravity, that brutality in our world, so graphically shown today on our television news, day after day after day. So it shows us how that need for our prayers, our penance, is greater than ever. think back over these last 100 years, Our Lady's warning through the shepherd children that unless we changed our ways, that greater conflict was to come. And sadly, that warning was not heeded, and that greater conflict came. We've been, again, over the last week, we've been remembering, as a society, as a human family, the horrors of the concentration camps, particularly Auschwitz. This last week, in commemorating the 70th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. A level of human darkness and evil that it's almost impossible, I think, for us to imagine, to comprehend. Before I became a priest, I was a teacher. I taught English as a foreign language, and I actually lived out in Poland for over 10 years. I went there as a young graduate after I'd graduated from university. Went there in 1989, just as the Berlin Wall was coming down, and one by one, very much through the graces brought through St. John Paul II, that wall of communism began to crumble. And I arrived at that moment when society was coming alive again. I was able to see the effect on the human soul that communism had in Poland. But perhaps that darkest of times was that time of the Second World War, those concentration camps, which had the explicit aim of destroying the human soul. You may have watched on the television this week different programs interviewing some of the survivors who are still alive of the concentration camps. And for me, it was very powerful to see how they had, each one of them, carried that burden, that a terrible cross which we cannot begin to imagine, of the wounds, the spiritual wounds, the physical wounds, the emotional wounds that those days and weeks and months and years in the concentration camps had left on them. There was one man who particularly struck me. He spoke about how he realized very quickly after the end of the war, as he began to recover, to put his life together again, that he would never be able to leave the horrors of the concentration camp behind unless he asked for God's grace to forgive. Unless he could forgive those who had done unspeakable things to him and to so many others, he would always be held, be poisoned by the hatred of that place. And he said that through the grace of faith, through the grace of God, he had come to forgive. And so he said literally, it was like coming alive again. It was like being born again through the grace of forgiveness. There was another man, however, who had been unable to forgive. And he, in his life, had committed murder. He had committed terrible crimes because he had just been eaten away, polluted by this hatred, this sin that had entered his soul in the concentration camps. And he hadn't had that grace of forgiveness. And so he just spread that darkness to others through his life. It was only through receiving that light of grace, of forgiveness, of God's mercy, that the other survivor was able to begin to bring light to others himself. There was one man who said this beautiful thing about his time in the camp in Auschwitz. The smallest act of kindness seemed like a huge spark I chose to remember the sparks. He too had been healed of the darkness, the bitterness of the camps, by choosing to remember those moments of kindness, those moments of love. Of course, in a particular way, we think about St. Maximilian Kolbe, one of the greatest sparks of light, of hope in Auschwitz. He, of course, who had such a devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And he deliberately, day after day, during his time in Auschwitz, chose life, chose light. Little acts of kindness, of sacrifice, to bring God's presence into that place of evil, of darkness. He never stopped being a priest. And through his prayers, through his humility, his openness to the grace of God, he could make that slaughterhouse into a house of prayer, into a house of grace. He is a sign, as so many others are known in the concentration camps, who show the way of Mary, who show the way of light. Through those acts of kindness, through that daily bringing of everything to God in prayer, kept that light alive. And that is Our Lady's mission for each one of us. We will never, God willing, know the horrors and the darkness of such an experience as a concentration camp. But we do live in a dark and a dangerous and a challenging world. We all know that. We need to be those sparks. We need to receive that light of God every single day of our lives, in our prayer and our devotions, in the Holy Eucharist, the sacrament of reconciliation, so that that light can pass through us to light up our world around us. All that Our Lady asked of us through the shepherd children is so simple. To pray the rosary every day, the wearing of the brown scapular of Mount Carmel. Simple acts of reparation and self-sacrifice. Devotion, such as the first Saturday devotions. You don't need money for any of these. You don't need degrees and qualifications. You just need an open heart, a heart to hear the urgent plea of Mary to bring light to the world, to bring healing to the world, to be an open gate through whom that grace of God can flood into the world. That is a mission that we all share. That's the mission of Fatima. And here we are, united around Our Lady today, to be renewed in that mission, the beginning of this new year, 2015. Who knows what it holds for us as a human family? But we, as part of that family, have our role to play in this journey, this year to come, in this next page of our human history. We have our part to be sparks, to be signs of hope and light and faith, to be, as Maximilian Kolbe was in Auschwitz, that person who encourages others, that simple gesture of kindness, that sensitivity to one in need, that total openness, as Mary had for all her life, to the presence of God and the presence of God in others. So today, we give thanks for this message of Fatima, this mission of Fatima. And we rededicate ourselves to play our part as ministers of light, missionaries of mercy. This is our mission, the mission of Fatima.